Oh, hi. You just caught me here. About to start Art Jam. My name's Josh Herman. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to Gnomon Art Jam. Today we're going to be sculpting in some stuff in ZBrush. If you've never seen a Gnomon Art Jam before, basically we will be working in ZBrush. Sometimes I work in Photoshop, Maya, different programs like that. And we'll just kind of go through my process. It's a long form stream, so I'll be streaming from 3 hours today from 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific. So if you have any questions or if there's any comments or anything, as I'm doing something, please go ahead and feel free to ask in the chat and let me know so I can go ahead and try to show you what I'm doing, call out any answers to questions, or just in general if there's any issues with the stream stuttering, the quality looking bad, whatever, the music is too loud or too quiet, please let me know. You should be able to hear music now, so if there are any issues, let me know. Like I said, again, my name is Josh Herman. You can see here that I am the Chief Creative Officer here at Gnomon. I'm also a artist. I worked in the entertainment industry for a decade. I'll show you guys that a little bit real quick. And so you can see a little bit of my background. So as we are going through the stream today, uh, feel free to ask questions about anything you see. Where am I? Here. Anything you see here, you can feel free to ask questions about, whether that is something about working in games, working in film. I've worked on many big Marvel movies, worked on Uncharted, worked at Naughty Dog, worked on practical effects, making costumes, worked in games as a creative director and art director. So if you have any questions on any of this type of stuff, please let me know. And I'm happy to try to address them during the stream. Anyways, today what I'm going to be doing is working on this character. This is a character we've worked on in the previous several streams before. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to ask them. All of these characters, everything you're seeing here or that I'll be pulling up today has basically all been sculpted on stream. So if you look back at our YouTube channel, there's a lot of basically I don't know what the right, there's a playlist, there's a reservoir of material for you to watch if that's interesting to you, to watch these things start from the beginning. We're a little bit further into this specific project, and we've been working on this one for a couple weeks in a row. The goal of what this is we've basically created a little world and created a little bit of a cast here of characters. So I'm going to go ahead and just going to open those up so you can kind of see who our characters are. And some of these also have color on them, so I'll show you that as well. So we have our main hero, who is here. I'm reversed on my angles today. Our main character who is here. We have a kind of a companion character who will be here. So I'm just going to add the color to these so you can kind of see what they look like. This is our main hero. This is our companion. I'm going to scale them so they're roughly the right size. Go ahead and load up the, what did I call it? Creature. Dragon. This is sort of like a mount for this character, like a companion, like mount. Would probably be about yay big. Not necessarily sticking through their chest, but it's where they'd kind of be. And about this big. Gonna have them like this, like a large dog, just always wanting to be involved in the party. And then we'll load up our last one here, which was called this. And this was a tank mech thing we ended up making several streams ago that will very likely be our villain. So this is kind of our group that we're creating in this little world. And this, the goal for this, which is an important thing to state, is going to be illustration, 3D models used for illustration, keyframes, and then eventually 3D printing. You can see that over my left shoulder here, we have a Form 3, which I'm excited to start using. So we'll be 3D printing some stuff here within the next several weeks. So if you have any questions about 3D printing or anything that you're seeing today, please feel free to ask. Tankrantula, yes. Sort of some spidery tank thing. Things might change and evolve over time. So this very well may be very different, several weeks from now. But yeah, see, we already got some questions in the chat, which is great. If you have questions, I'll be answering them live as fast as I can. Somebody was saying, what were you doing for Uncharted? I worked on Uncharted 3. I worked during the last 8 months of the project and basically worked on a lot of the background characters, but also worked on one cinematic character while I was there. This is Salim. Salim is a Bedouin leader who comes in to kind of help Drake you know, at the third act of this not movie, at the end of the game, to kind of show him the way. So yeah, I worked on that character. I worked on a lot of background characters, grunt characters, worked on the character customization system, basically making sure that all of the pants fit all the shirts, and the shirts fit the gloves, and the pants fit the boots, and the hats, and all that kind of stuff. So that was also used in the randomization of enemies, so that the designers could basically just say, we want to have X amount of enemies show up, and every time that they show up, they should have a randomized face with hat and hair and eyeballs and gloves and pants and all that stuff. So I worked on that at Naughty Dog. Thank you for the question, though. If somebody says they have questions about environments, do you make it in 3D or in post, like Photoshop, like matte painting? I personally will do mostly 3D environments, but you can do it either way. Somebody is saying a question from YouTube, or maybe a comment, is that their biggest challenge is eyelids, sculpting eyelids. We'll be adjusting that today a little bit as we'll be finalizing some of this head sculpt. And then somebody else asked, do I have a sketchbook you frequently draw in? No, I have a sketchbook, many sketchbooks that I will keep notes in. I'm not as much of a 2D artist as I am a 3D artist. So you'll see this sketchbook is just kind of filled with scribbles. So those aren't really intelligible drawings, but they're scribbles that kind of illustrate, to me at least, what the point of what I'm wanting to get across. So almost 80 to 99% of my work is done in 3D. So if you don't necessarily have to do 2D work if you want to be a 3D artist. That's definitely a misconception that people will have, for sure. But I use it more for myself to have a starting point or a jumping off point before I get started. So it's just more for myself. But good question for sure. Project 43D from Twitch is asking, is the Iron Man suit sculpted or poly-modeled in old-fashioned? Depending on the suit that you're talking about, it would be poly-modeled. This one here is the only one that was more sculpted in ZBrush, and that's because the forms were more anatomical and more organic, so it was a little easier to define what some of those shapes might be, right? So especially when we get into some of these areas, this was more sculpted to make sure that these lines and stuff were all going to be lining up and stuff like that in a way that would be appealing. Whereas characters, if you're looking down here, like at the Mark 7, this is poly-modeled in Maya. A lot of my work on all the Iron Man suits was all done in Maya. So this one and, the other ones as well. So this one as well. War Machine 2.0, which was eventually renamed to Iron Patriot, which is exactly the same design, just with a little recoloring and a little star right there. It was also done in Maya. So this is all polymodeling work, which I don't do a ton of anymore. I mostly do sculpting. And then also going back to the question about sketching, I actually do a lot of 3D sketching. So if you've ever watched the stream before, or if you've never watched the stream before, you'll see me do a lot of short projects, meaning a project that lasts no more than a stream. So 2 hours, 3 hours, sometimes 1 hour, 30 minutes to get an idea out there. So there's hundreds of sculpts that I have on my hard drives that basically are not finished, but the intention was just to work for as long as I could see the final outcome or what it would be. And to me, that's very similar to sketching in a sketchbook. So even though it's not all on paper or using your hands in that traditional medium, it's kind of the same for me, just to kind of get an idea out there. So yeah, good questions. Just before I continue and actually get into the sculpting part today, which we'll be working on this character, not this tank thing. Is the music okay? Is there any issues with anything so far? Can you even hear the music? It's a little lo-fi, so I don't know if it's really coming in all that much, but let me know if there's any issues with it or if you can't hear it at all. Barely, I can't. All right, let me just turn that up just a little bit. Sometimes it's the sound, and sometimes it's the song itself. But I think because we're in lo-fi, we'll turn it up just a bit. Let me know if it gets to be too much or if it's not enough. What are my PC specs? This is a machine that I am working on from Gnomon. So this is a i9. Let's see what we got. This is an i9 9920 at 3.5 gigahertz, 64 gigabytes of RAM. And then the graphics card that we are using today is a 2080 Ti. Hello, everybody. I see some of y'all joining in. Hello, good to see you. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let me know if the music gets too loud or if there's any issues, and I'll adjust as we move forward. All right, we're going to sculpt on this head. There was a question earlier about sculpting eyelids. Eyelids is a very tough part of the body to sculpt. You'll actually see, I'm going to turn off the color on this whole character here. So we're just going to be looking at it kind of in a grayscale mode. What we have here from the last stream is where I was last stream. So even though there's some more costuments on here, you'll see the before and after. And what I'm doing is I'm basically taking the sketch that we did over several streams, and I'm going to basically start making the final version of all these costume elements, head, hands, etc., and sculpting them out to a final degree. What I did last stream, I'll isolate this piece. You'll see there's multiple meshes here that are intersecting. So I started to basically clean this all up, give it a little bit more subdivisions. And one of the areas that I was kind of focusing on was this eye region. And eyes are really difficult. And I'll just kind of jump over to another element really quickly because it'll actually be a little easier to kind of help you maybe with your question about sculpting eyelids. Eyelids and lips, I find that are very, very difficult to sculpt because they involve a lot of overlaps that people don't necessarily think of when they're sculpting, and it can be a bit of a challenge. That is not the one that I wanted. You know, I'm just going to load up this project. There's a head planes project. If you're using ZBrush, you can go into hit comma, which is your light box, go into your project, go to your head planes, and we'll just load up one of these. We'll reload the tools that we're working on here in a minute. That's not a big deal. You want to save? No, that's fine. Right, let's just switch over to that other matte cap. I like to sculpt in matte caps. Some people don't like them, but I'm a pretty big fan. So if you're having trouble sculpting eyelids, I'll load this up and I'll load up a sphere, and we'll get a little bit of a better understanding as to why eyelids and lips can be a real challenge. So let's go ahead and pop open a sphere, make Polymesh 3D so we don't have to worry about any issues there. And the first thing you're going to do is I'll add some subdivisions. And this is what I see a lot of people struggle with. They're going to take this and they're going to start trying to make some eyelids. So most people can identify this as kind of an eyelid shape, right? And how do you take this and put an eyeball in it, right? How do we turn this into something that looks, you know, if we had a nose and a mouth and a fancy curly mustache, right? Like what would this actually look like? And I think everybody can maybe hopefully see that this is graphically something that looks like a face, but when we look around, it's very stylized. It looks kind of like a Muppet or a Mad Ball or anything like that, and that's because there's an underlying lack of form, and a lack of layering of planes. If you've watched the stream many times or any at all, really, you probably heard me talk about planes before. Planes are one of the core concepts that you need to get into if you want to do sculpting, traditionally or digitally. It doesn't really matter. Now, I switched to this planes of the head model because it'll get us a little bit further, but it's planes, meaning the intersection between two forms creates a peak, right? So this has really nice peaks in all these areas of where those planes are. And note that all of the planes are planar, meaning they're not really curved. They're like a solid, flat section. So when you're sculpting eyelids, as compared to what we did here with this ball, which has no planes, or a million planes, if you count all of these, no planes, trying to sculpt an eyeball becomes very difficult because there's nothing there to sculpt on, right? I'm having to build form to do that. Whereas here, with this one, what I need to do is I'm going to make the same graphical shape. We're going to sculpt this first one. I'm using the clay buildup brush in case anybody's wondering. You'll see my brush change here in the top left. I use hotkeys, switching between 1 and 6 to use my brushes. So I'm not going to go into the brush palette all that often. There's obviously a million brushes you can switch with if you want to use this. But I'm using the clay buildup brush. I'm just going to draw in some of these planes. I notice that even if I make the same graphical shapes that we were making in here, layering some of this clay on top of itself. Right, we start to get a better result on this because of the planes and the overlaps. And what is it that's important to know about the overlaps is that it's actually the underlying structure, meaning this section right here. So you can see this area right here in the where this angle is, kind of on the side of the head where the eye would be. And there's a very sharp overlap. If you actually give yourself and go into like a mirror and look at what the angle of your bone right here is and how much your top eyelid sits on top of your bottom eyelid, you'll see that it's pretty significant. And it's important to notice the overlap first and how those forms are structured, because imagine that there is no overlap or one is not on top of another, right? And so I'm going to change our camera perspective so I can use some examples. All right, so I'm going to be right here. So imagine, we're looking at eyelids. So if they sit perfectly, and you can think about this with your teeth, you can think about this with your mouth, you can think about this with your eyes, anything that's supposed to encompass something and go over it needs to have an overlap. Otherwise, if they meet consistently, it's going to look, first off, very flat, but second off, it's just not really going to be very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sculpt really quickly, again, that same shape. I'm going to put a little eyeball in there. Same thing that we're doing over here, right? You can see this is kind of the same thing. And when I'm sculpting on this sphere, you can see what I'm doing in the side view is I'm actually trying to create this angle right here, which is probably not, hopefully not very shockingly, the similar angle as to what is happening right here. Well, that was a bad drawing, but right, this angle right here. That's what I'm aiming for. So it's all about this overlap, and it's important. Notice what I'm going to even start doing sculpturally is that this one is going to sit on top of this one, just like I was saying with your teeth or your eyes or your mouth. One has to be on top of the other one to make it feel like it's really sitting in that socket, and that's how it actually functions. So if we zoomed in on any close pictures of an eyeball, I'll just Google eyeball. We'll bring that over. I'm sure we'll find something interesting. This is the first thing we want to notice. We'll just like eyeball profile. Let's see if we can find a profile of an eyeball. Not necessarily the eyeball itself. You can see in this image how this is in front of, this image right here, how this is actually in front of and on top of this one. That's an important thing to note. The second thing to note about eyeballs, and this is also about lips and other things, is the actual thickness of the eyelid itself is really important. So meaning if I'm coming over here and we start sculpting, we'll go back to this one. You can make the eyelid thickness quite thick. If you want to do a little science experiment for yourself, take a photo, get real close, like use your phone, and take a photo of your eye. And what you'll notice, and I want to go back to another one here, probably something more like, oh, this could be perfect right here. So let's take a look at this. See how thick this distance is, both the top and the bottom. There's a whole section here, right? That is a relatively meaty flap of skin that's going and covering your eyeball. And the reason it's that big is and that thick is it protects your eyes from the outside if you're blinking or sleeping or doing anything like that, right? But if you don't have that thickness, and again, that thickness is going to create a plane, you're not going to have eyes that look like they're sitting inside of the head. It's an important element of sculpting because the planes are going to create shadows. So rather than it all feeling like it's one consistent surface, which might feel more like this, right? Meaning I'm not creating a separation between this and this. Whereas if I undo and basically just push that same shape inside the head a little more, which would let us create this plane. So you see I'm really exaggerating it here from the side view, but you can see that shape that I'm making and how thick I've made those eyelids. That'll help it sit inside of the head a little bit better. So hopefully that's helpful for you, but it is an important thing to kind of think about when you're sculpting a character. All right, let me go back and load up the project we're going to be working on today. Struggling to find it in my, there we go. So if I even come in here, you'll probably see that's actually some of what I was doing here. Last stream we also did some poses. I enjoy doing poses just to test them out. So we took this character, we ended up doing kind of a pose. So we're going to keep running with this character a little bit. All right. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to turn off the color here. So you can see one-to-one between the two projects. Going back to that eyelid conversation. Never in my life would I know that being an artist would result in so much conversation about eyelids. You'd be shocked at how many times it's a very common thing that people have trouble with. But anyways, oh, I don't want the hammer. I want this one. All right, so let's isolate those two. Great. This is the after and this is the before. Let's zoom in on that area. And you'll see what I was doing. I'll actually just isolate everything, including the eyeball. There we go. So this is the before, and this is kind of the sketch phase of this head. And what you'll see is I didn't really resolve any of these forms. So what we did a lot of last stream, and we'll continue to do this stream, is resolve these forms, meaning when it looks graphically interesting, but it doesn't necessarily show us what this is made of, what it's, how it is actually resolved. So when we get into certain areas like this, there's no way that this could create an eyelid shape that would fold, that would function within any normal anatomy of any type, right? So we went to this, and you can see I've added it kind of exactly what I was just talking about. The thickness of the eyelid is more apparent, and where the eyelid itself overlaps the previous forms is also more spelled out. What this bulge is that was on top is kind of defined. Right. So that's a lot of what we're going to be doing today, and we're going to take this, we'll show the rest of the character. I'm going to hide some of these layered pieces here. Get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. We're going to work on just this for now. Work on this head. So our goals for today during the rest of the stream are we're going to sculpt on this head for a while. We're going to try to resolve it to a more final state, and we will also be like replacing the teeth with actual teeth, individual elements. If we get to it, we'll see if we can make the jaw open, creating a layer to open and close that. And we'll just kind of keep pushing forward on this. So as I'm working, let me know if there's any issues or if anything, if there are any questions. There we go. The sound is a little loud for me, but I don't know if that's just for me or if it's for everybody. How's the sound sounding for everyone else? Loud, quiet? I kind of want to just hide the rest of the body. Loud. Thank you. The sound isn't too loud. I'll turn it down just a smidge. All right. So let's continue. What were we doing? We were doing from here to here. This is new. This is old. Things I want to resolve. This is very sketchy. Right, all this kind of stuff. Resolve some of this anatomy. Resolve what the material is, what the actual substance that the skin is made of. I don't know yet if I want to do scales, if it'll just be like a leathery skin or something like that. We'll get into some of that today. And like I said, we'll probably do a layer to open that mouth. How about everybody in chat? Any projects y'all are working on? Movies you've been watching that were interesting? Games you've been playing? I'm currently building up a list of RPGs I want to go through. Older or newer, so if there's any RPGs that you feel like I should play, let me know. I'm just starting to work my way through Banner Saga, which is older, obviously, but I'm going to do Banner Saga 1, 2, and 3. And then I think I might get into Planescape Torment. I've never played it, and then probably Baldur's Gate 2. Play some of the older ones first, well, and then work my way to new ones. Hi. Somebody's saying, waiting for New World. Somebody just saw Sleepers, Divinity Original Sin. Is that Original Sin 1 or 2? 2 is on my list. I've never beaten it. I started it and got through Fort Joy like twice, but I never really finished it, and I really, really would like to finish it. Just bought ZBrush and trying to learn it. Cool. Fan from YouTube is saying, having a crisis of being good enough to apply to art schools. Oh, that sounds heavy. I don't know what kind of schools you're applying to, but if you're applying to Gnomon, you should reach out to our admissions team. So that we say that every stream, but reach out to our admissions team. We do not work in a normal way, meaning we tell you to work with our admissions team who acts and functions more as a counselor than they do just reviewing applications. So happy to explain that if that would be helpful. What you'll see me do, just so you know, is I'm going back and forth. I've created or loaded both the old tool here and the new tool here, and so I'll be this is old and this is new, but to make sure that I'm not missing something that I liked. For example, when I'm going back and forth, I can say this is old and this is new, right? I kind of like some of the wedge shape to the head, which I've lost a little bit as this got extended or straightened out. And this straightness here on the jaw is starting to bother me. What I did here is a little too much, I think, so I'm going to bring that back. Somebody from YouTube is saying, any tips for creating stories? I'm searching for ideas, but stuck at ideas. Okay. If you know, please help. What kind of story are you looking for? What's the medium? A game, a film, a short story, a novel, a D&D campaign? What kind of thing are you making that would be helpful? I just finished running a 20-session D&D campaign. I almost killed my players in the final battle, but they survived. So that was a fun one. Tiny, I know. It was a pre-written module. It was Curse of Strahd, which was actually really fun. Trying to catch up as fast as I can on the campaign 2 of Critical Role. I'm about 3 episodes away. I think their finales either this week or next week. A 1-minute show reel for film. Is this for school? Something in here feels weird. There's like a weird divot that I've created that I don't think needs to be here. I don't think it really adds anything to the character, so I might just omit it. This sounds like Logic's 1-800 music. Oh, it did. For school, right on. Ideas. Well, I guess ideas for a show reel, the biggest piece of advice I would say is focus it around your strengths, about what you want to do as a job when you when you graduate, and make sure you can complete it. The story itself, unless you're trying to be a director, I don't know necessarily what you're aiming for, but if you're trying to be an artist in CG of some type, very likely the story doesn't really matter. Just some cool visuals. And the cool visuals that are finished is probably the most important part, because that's what people will be looking at as a demo reel. Just some of this neck. I should probably have the full character up as I do this section of it, but that's okay. Critical Role finale is tomorrow. It's supposed to be 7 hours long. Yeah, there's no way I'm going to catch up on. I think I have to watch 9 hours by tomorrow evening. That's not going to happen. I will attempt to not get it spoiled for me, which will also probably be impossible, but I'll give it a shot. I think I'm wrapping up episode 138 right now. Like 15 minutes left. No spoilers in chat, please, for any of that. Just in general. But, courteous. Gotta be courteous to everybody else. I'm curious to see if they'll start a campaign 3 or how that will go. Sorry if it bothers you. No reason, no reason, no worries. No worries at all. Does not bother me. Happy to chat about whatever people are interested in chatting about. I think show reels, story show reels are cool, but at the end of the day, unless you're applying for a directing position or an animatic position or some type of position where you're trying to tell story, I would focus on the assets and what you want to do as a position that you'll be applying for. My biggest piece of advice for that. This feels really boring right here. But does it need to be more interesting, or is it going to take away from something if I do, you know, like a little thing? Meaning I could make it more designy, meaning like, oh, I could create shapes and, you know, something that does something. But is that cooler, or is it just a different shape? You know, you want to be a 3D character artist. Well, if your show reel, if you have to make a show reel for school, which many schools make that a requirement for graduation, I would focus it on a character or one to no more than 3, something you can get done at a very high quality, and make your shots simple. I've been toying around with the idea of giving him a helmet before. I don't know if she'll need a helmet. Kind of like this aesthetic, which is sort of like, this is all the same size, but this like serrated look. I see a lot of games do this, sort of Doom, or this kind of like sawtooth look. I'd also avoid dialogue in any types of those projects. Having hired for character artist positions before, I would tell you with full honesty, people will probably mute your show reel. People who review a lot of portfolios in a day are just honestly not looking to watch a whole movie. They're looking to see what kind of work you do. Just ideas. What kind of stuff do you like? That's where I would start. If you got to make it a big project, make it about something you like. Creating this form in here, I'm not sure I like it. It's there. It's definitely different than before. It's less aggressive than before. That was also one of the goals of what we've been doing. That's a sphere. And there we go. See, I've lost some of the detail here. That's okay. Detail can always be brought back. And some of this wasn't all that important to begin with, this kind of stuff down here. All right. These teeth out of the way. I don't really know what the jaw here is going to look like. You can see I've kind of created a section here where the teeth actually all go all the way back here. They should. Same down here. The teeth should be going all the way back here. Some sort of weird wackiness that I've created though, where it's actually here. So that means I can do one of a couple things. One is I just make it a membrane. Very, you know, dinosaur venom sort of a thing, which I'm actually a big fan of. So we'll probably just do that. That means the teeth need to be in a very specific arrangement. So that's okay. Sounds like you like murder mysteries. That's interesting. let's just get into it. Kind of dancing around the idea of like replacing these teeth and doing all that stuff, but I think I just need to jump into it and say, okay, here's going to be the last tooth, at least in here. And then this is going to be the last tooth here. What does it actually look like? Okay, okay. Okay. This whole mouth is probably going to end up getting changed at least a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start replacing these top teeth first. So these things here, get this tongue out of the way. And then I'll probably do the same with the bottom teeth. Teeth are really, really simple to make. You can do it a couple different ways. The way that I like to do it is just bring it in spheres or cones or cubes, whatever one you prefer the most. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to append or insert. Insert will, the difference between append and insert, in case you don't know, is append will add it at the bottom of this list, inserts it into the list. So I'm going to insert a sphere. Not the one that I already sculpted on, just this one. And that is this is initialized though. I'm just going to dynamesh this thing. Much lower than that though. Let's see what 8 does for us. Yaha! It's a little large. Scale that down. Even further. And put it up here by the way. The tooth will be still quite large. Like this. Well, I think it sounds like you already have a little bit of your story. Am I going to retopo this? Not to the full degree, I don't think, unless I need to. I've already Z-remeshed it, so you can kind of see what that looks like here. But I don't know if I'll do a full retopo. I might, though. Like, reprojecting is not a major deal, so if I really need to do it, I'll do it. But right now, I don't really want to. Is kind of what it's coming down to. So I'm just making a tooth shape. Attempting to scale it down. We're just going to place this in here. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually just going to delete these teeth. Delete meaning I'm just going to slowly smooth them out, but I'll always have previous versions of this file. So if I want to, I can just bring them in. I'll probably just go ahead and get some of these duplicated first so I can bring them over. If you hold down Control while you're holding down this and move them, it will duplicate them for you. So just kind of get these placed. So let's see. Do you need to retopologize a model in order to import it into Blender? No, you do not. The main reason you need to retopologize a model is for poly count. Blender can handle decent poly counts, though. Goosebumps, hello. Welcome back. Place in these teeth. What you'll see is eventually they'll get a little set like this. They kind of look like little chiclets, and we will, you know, figure out where they're going to go in a minute. Figure out the size, the shape. Right now, I'm just getting the geometry in place. It's not super important as far as what the actual design itself looks like. Just replacing, basically going from that sketch phase to the, this is going to be a real model phase. First time in the streams, not watching too much, but you sculpting and background music are good companions while working my portfolio. Happy to hear. I have told many people that you don't necessarily need to watch, but hopefully I can be a good accountability partner, or lab partner, or work on your own projects while I'm doing my project. You do your project. If you want to tune in and see what I'm doing, that's cool. More interested in you doing your thing. All right, so we're going to make these ones a little bigger at the end. And I'm going to take this, the plugin, subtool master, I'm going to mirror, I'm going to append it, or merge it, excuse me, into the one subtool, not a separate subtool. Hit OK. And now you'll see we have a full-on set of teeth here. These ones look like they're crossed over. So I'm just going to quickly fix that real quick. I will break the symmetry on them pretty quickly. Got a job interview tomorrow. Congratulations. Hopefully that goes well. I'm going to take this whole thing now. Let's get this tooth kind of more aligned. Looks like all these teeth are slightly off, which means my mirroring is somewhat off for some reason. That's okay. We might need to mirror these eventually because they are in a weird spot. All right, so I'm going to take this whole subtool. I'm going to duplicate it. You know what? I'm going to be good, and I'm going to rename it. We're getting to like a real model situation here. Making a hotkey for the rename button, which is F2. Teeth, top, head. F2, why? Because F2 is what you can use to rename your files in Windows. In case anybody doesn't know, this is the character that we're working on. It does have the rest of a face, which looks like this. So working on this character here. Hello, and welcome to the stream. We're already almost 50 minutes into the stream, which feels like it went by incredibly quick. But we should be jamming on this character today. What is my... Sorry, saving a file while reading. What is my technique for adding quick secondary breakups to your sculpts? Great question. To me, it's all about the breaking down of planes. So if I feel like something has too much detail or too little detail or too much of a plane or too little of a plane, I will basically adjust that and break it into something that feels more interesting. So, the quick way to say that is, like, here's, for an example, we were doing that very, very quick, rough example of how to sculpt eyelids, right? The planes of the head is a really good example. Let's say this is what I sculpted right here, right? To add more secondary details, I try to sculpt somewhat planar to understand the underlying structure, but all I need to do to add more details to this is break this plane into two planes. So I'm just using the clay brush here. Right, and now that's added a secondary detail. It's going to add a secondary detail. It doesn't have to go across the whole thing. All right, breaking this into a plane, breaking these into some different planes, and then maybe using this brush, which is the clay buildup brush, to add planes. Right, and now you can take something that feels simpler, right, going from something that's simple to something that is less simple. So it's more about looking at the underlying form language and how to adjust it. Goosebumps asks, can you talk about these breakups a bit and why you use them? Sure. What you're looking for is contrast, what it comes down to. If you just imagine this as an image, and it's not a sculpture, it's a 2D image, where would you want to add contrast to make it more interesting? You might want to create some eyes. Notice that as I draw these squiggles in, that adds contrast to this area here, right? Maybe I want to add, and even after I do that, I want to add a little bit more contrast into this area to make it some hollow ghost thing, right? So I'm going to take these planes, I'm going to break them down. We're going to make a classic zombie. I watched Army of the Dead a couple weeks ago or whenever it came out. So I'm adding contrast to this area, making it more interesting. Generally, contrast makes something more interesting, or it draws your eye there. Lack of contrast, now all of a sudden your eye is drawn to this area because this area is so simple, right? So if I want the eye to be drawn to a specific region, I'll create more contrast, or I'll basically, in other words, create a reason for your eye to go there. If I don't want your eye to go there, I'll find reasons for your eye to not go there. Whether I create lines that divert away from this, sometimes it'll point towards it, right? So if I want you to look there, I'll make lines only go in that direction. It's easy. Now it looks sort of like a weird Jason, right? You can find more designy ways to do that. So it's all depending on where you want the viewer to look. What are the steps you should keep in mind when doing miniature artwork? That's a really good question. What you should do when you're wanting to make miniature artwork is know how small the miniature is going to be when you print it. I'm assuming you're talking about printing or, you know, stuff that would be used in miniature photography or tabletop gaming. If it's 25 millimeters, 24, I think, 29 is the standard like tabletop mini. I was making more teeth. That's what I was doing. We're going to duplicate the top teeth to make the bottom teeth. And then I'm just going to mirror it, and then we'll move those around. And then what you can do when you're, let's hide this tongue. What you can do with minis is actually size them on your screen. So we'll bring back the top of its head. This is going to be very small for everybody, but you know, I'll use this view here. How big is this on your screen? For me right now, this is probably about 7 inches. When I was working in practical effects, I would actually keep a ruler next to my monitor so that I could hold my ruler up to the monitor and say how tall is the object going to be on my monitor. And that would help me know whether or not the details of the print or the proportions of the print would work for the size it was going to be made. For example, here's a robot that I sculpted a long time ago. This is a miniature. All right, this is 25 millimeters. What I would do to sculpt something of this size, again, you can see it now here, what the actual size of it is I would make it this size on my screen. So what that looks like for what I'm looking at right here is I would take this and I would go shrink it down. I'll shrink it down just so you can, this is going to be very small for everybody here. You're not going to be able to see any details, but I'm going to take, you can't see me do this, but I'm going to take this mini, I'm going to put it right here next to my monitor and say, how tall would this character be? And it would be about this tall. So I'm now looking at my 3D model, not this model, this is a size reference model. I'm looking at this and saying, do the details hold up? Is the character looking the way that I want it to? Or are pieces of it getting lost? Right now, this character isn't necessarily being built for miniatures, but if you are somebody who's into miniatures, into 3D printing, I would recommend looking at characters like Warhammer. Warhammer is a fantastic example of this. So let's just pull open some Warhammer Space Marine designs. I'm sure we'll find something interesting here just on Google search. Perfect. Warhammer was built as a mini, like, obviously, well, I didn't really want that, but look at this. You can see the size and the proportions of these characters, right? They are built and they are designed to be small, right? They're built and designed to be, less than 25 millimeters to 40 millimeters or something like that. So when you click on any of these images, they're actually designed so that those proportions make sense for that scale, so that they make a little more sense rather than just shrinking down a standardly proportioned character, right? So check out this type of stuff. Check out other things that are built for minis, and also notice how big their forms are, how chunky a lot of the stuff that they have on here. I mean, even like their dreadnought here, how square this is, how well it reads as a miniature. That's all important stuff to think about, because it's not terribly big if you've ever seen one of these in person. So if you're making stuff for miniatures or for model building or anything like that, it's all about what the actual size will be when you're working on it. Fan is asking, does the average skill of applying students rise every year? People just seem to get better and better at a young age. I don't actually know, but I would wager not really. Right? They might have more advanced 3D skill sets sometimes when they apply, but I would say generally it's probably about the same. And we don't even look necessarily for 3D skills, just so you know, in applying. Let's hide these top teeth, which I will hide now. Let's check out these bottom teeth. I'm going to mirror these bottom teeth. Where'd they go? Aha, they're way down here. One piece of advice that I got that was really kind of shocking to me about portfolios, it goes to a lot of different things: portfolios, applying for applications, applying for a job. I was always, maybe similar to you, a little afraid of being, not good enough to get in, not good enough to whatever. And the piece of advice that I got that was eye-opening for me and pretty interesting was that that's not really your choice. It's not your choice when you're applying if you're good enough. It's the people who you are applying to's choice if you are good enough. They will be the judge or the person who will be choosing that, right? And even though that sounds weird and maybe even borderline aggressive, you'll never know unless you apply. So what's the harm in applying? What's the harm in somebody saying you're not good enough? You're not qualified enough to get this job. You need to work a little bit more on your portfolio before you can apply. I failed the Naughty Dog character art test 3 times. Eventually, I worked there. I didn't get there on my first shot, but I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't do it 3 times. So it's not really your choice. It's other people's choice. And if you want to figure out if you're good enough, the only way to do it is to apply. Worst case is that you're back where you were before applying. I'm definitely going to have to mirror a lot of these, so I think I'm going to delete half of these teeth. Delete this. Probably delete this. We'll just start on one side. Going into geometry, delete hidden. Modify topology, delete hidden. Otherwise, I'm going to be struggling with mirroring these all over the place, so I don't really want to do that. And orientation and all that fun stuff. Can you give any advice on what to talk about when you get asked about your weaknesses on an interview? The only advice I would give is be honest. You can do the classic, I don't want to give you a weakness answer, which is, my only weakness is that I'm too passionate about learning My weakness is that I care too much. Interviewers read through that in a heartbeat, and they know that you're lying to them or that you're not really telling them what they want to hear. They're not stupid. So I would be honest. What is your weakness from an art standpoint? That's probably what they're talking to you about, unless they're asking about personality. You know, if you want to say, well, I don't take critique well, that's probably not what you want to tell them. But if you want to say, you know, my weakness is texturing, or I don't know what your position is, but I'm not very good at lighting. I'm not very good at composition. I'm not very good at blah, whatever that blah is. That's what I would do. That's what I've done. When I went to work in games after working in practical effects, you get a lot of questions. I got a lot of questions about, well, if you ever worked in a game before, rather than saying, oh, well, you know, I've worked in this and I know this technique, and, you know, just own it. No, I have never worked in a game before. No, I do not know what it's like to do this thing, whatever you're asking about. But I'm willing to learn. And here's some other examples of how where or how I have learned. And I'm excited to learn. I'm excited to do it. I've really wanted to be doing this. I think it just gave me the same subtool on top of itself. Let's see. Polygroups. Auto groups. Nope. All right, we'll use this way, which is deformation, geometry, mirror and weld. See, that's copying something in the middle. I don't want that. Crossover, it'll say, oh, still a little piece in the middle. Make sure there's not two there. Great. Mirror and weld. Nothing's there. So what I'll do is I'll just go deformation, mirror the actual geometry. Not in Y. I realize that there's probably now a second set of teeth down there, isn't there? Yup. Let's delete that. Mirror and weld. There we go. Wanted to ask the best public school or college university for game art or game design in Canada. I do not know. I'm sorry. Don't follow the Canadian game art scene. Yeah, somebody says go to the rookies. They have good rankings. Do you still think it's necessary to go into person to school with the pandemic? It should a lot can be done online. With things seemingly getting back online, will online version of Gnomon go online? We will not be having a full experience online. You can still do individual courses online. But I personally have found that in-person classes create more of a community. And a community is something that is very important for me because it's also about networking. It's about, finding those people that you'll have a lifetime connection with. And a lot of the times, even though you could create that or find ways to do that, those things are things that will last for a very, very long time, and they'll get you jobs in the future. So even though maybe the first job is doable and is very doable online, it's not the same as doing it in person. So my opinion is in person is a superior learning model. So yes, hopefully that answers your question. Helped you a lot. Awesome. Happy to hear, Goosebumps. Best of luck on your interview tomorrow. I think you said it was tomorrow. All right. Now that I have some of these in, I'm going to start just deleting these top teeth. When I say deleting, I just mean I'm going to start smoothing them. We're pushing them back into the original thing. I'm going to switch to my brush here. I'm going to go brushes, smooth, smooth stronger. Okay. Just as it's kind of the same thing, just was more aggressive of a smooth. My mirroring is off. See this? Why? What happened? This whole thing is off. The whole head is off, look. How did we get here? You can see right here, it drifted. What? And then it came back to the middle right here. What the hell? All right. Well, it looks more natural, which is fine. But now I have to figure out how I'm going to fix this. So I can do it individually. It isn't really a problem. It'll just take a little bit extra time. Not a problem at all. Those will sculpt in a minute. Those will sculpt in a minute. Let's show those top teeth. There they are. It's probably all this is fine. This is probably... maybe this is going to be fine. It might all need a little bit of extra love down there, so that's okay. This is when some people ask, you know, like, when do you do symmetry? When do you break symmetry? When do you not break symmetry? And for me, it's always like, sometimes I'll try to stay in symmetry as long as I possibly can, for the exact reason that you're seeing right now, because I don't necessarily want to, you know, sculpt every tooth and every molar and every gum asymmetrically. You don't have to do it that way. There's no reason you need to do it that way. That's part of why you're working digitally. I'm switching to the Move Topological brush, just so you know. That's because I can make this really large and I can move individual teeth or adjustments to those teeth. My friend Brian calls this the toothbrush because it's so good at doing this type of stuff. And as I do this, I'm also going to get in here and start sculpting these pieces. Looks like there's some wicked topology in here. I like that they put the texting noise in this lo-fi sound. It's just somebody texting. And even the send noise. All right, what did I just destroy? There we go. This is starting to get there. So you can see all I'm really doing is I brought in some geometry to replace those elements, and then just basically start deleting those elements until it was more natural. At this point, I likely will stop using symmetry on, especially on these front teeth. Nothing will make something look faker quicker than a perfect set of teeth. That always looks really fake, really fake. Gives you creatures from the Castlevania show vibes. Looking good. Thank you. Appreciate that. I haven't watched the Castlevania anime yet, but it looks amazing. I had heard the first season wasn't amazing, and so I was holding off on it. But now it's got like, what, 4 seasons? Got a lot. So I'm just going to start sculpting around these teeth, switching to my toothbrush, the Move Topology brush, and start adjusting these. Also adjust some of these shapes so that they're not all canine teeth. Submit in the middle, but dig in season 4. Good to know. I'm gonna make some of these a little thicker, more molary teeth down the back. Could obviously just copy these over to the other side. Maybe not a bad idea. So let's try that real quick. Hide this. Let's do the old delete hidden mirror and weld. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's just try this. Z plugin, mirror, append. Great. It's going to be here. We're going to hide these and delete them. Then we're going to go back in here. And this one and this one. Yep. Merge it down. Take these bad boys and move them over. So not these. Just give me a little rotate. Just give me a little jump start. There we go. Doing some dental work today. What am I making today? I am continuing a creature where we've worked on for several streams in a row. We're doing a little dental work, like I was just saying. We're making some teeth, going from a more sketchy sculpt, which is something that looks like this, where the teeth are all kind of a piece, and they look fine at a distance from here, but with close inspection, they look, sketchy. Taking some of that. This is our character that we've been working on for several streams, especially if you're just joining the stream. Welcome to Art Jam. Today we're sculpting on this head, which is part of this character that we ended up posing and doing some tests of last week. This is our character that we have been working on. Part of a cast. This will be our hero, anti-hero character, and so we're just kind of progressing on that. Looks like we got about an hour 45 left in the stream. If there's any questions, comments, anything anybody wants to know about, let me know. Was this the one? No. This one. All right, let's work on these teeth a little bit longer. Wait, this isn't it. This is it. Top teeth. I like the eyeballs to be in there just so it feels more natural as you're working on it. All right. So what we can do, something also to be conscious of if you're doing characters and you want to get into kind of where I'm at right now, is the thickness of things. We talked about this before, at the very beginning of the stream. We were talking about like the thickness of an eyeball. Very similar things with lips, mouths, etc. Take a look at some anatomical reference whenever you're doing this. But figuring out what the actual thickness of this shape will be really important if you're going to be animating this. How big the mouth is, like what does the cavity of the mouth look like? So I'm going to carve this out a little bit more. Do I think we'll ever really see this? Probably not. Almost certainly not. But it does add to the believability of it. And it's pretty important. And there's also a lot of cool shapes you can sculpt in here. Maybe in the back here we'll sculpt out some of this. We have our tongue in here, which we'll eventually sculpt more about. As always, we'll start saving. Good habit to save every couple hours or minutes, depending on how paranoid you are. It's really a personal choice. ZBrush does have auto-saving. It just takes a while. It'll save the whole project, all your tools all at once. When sculpting something like this, do you first make a skeleton or just go ham in the block out? Ham in the block out. Unless you really know what you're trying to, there's not really a reason to do like a crochet style, skeleton first, muscle system, fat, and then skin. There's not really a reason to do that most times, unless, especially not for something where you're creating your own design, because you're not really going to get to what the design is for a very, very long time. So finding a way to, speed it up and just sculpt the end result first is what you want. And then if you need to go back to those things, you go back to those things and figure them out. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Let's get some more of these teeth in. We could spend all day, many days on these teeth, and we'll spend some time on them for sure. Well, what you'll see over the next several weeks as we work on this character is that things should just slowly level up. The drinking game of how many times we end up saying iterate on this stream will be shocking, so don't follow along. But we're going to iterate on this over and over and over until it slowly meets an end result. Goonless from Twitch asks, as a recent grad for VFX modeling, what should I focus on when I take a crack at creature character modeling? When you're doing that, is that for production or are you thinking concept? Production. Well, You said you just graduated, so I'm assuming you have a reel. I guess I would just say focus on, like, I don't know. I kind of could go either way on a couple of things I want to say, but I guess I would say, like, you probably want to focus on showing the potential employer, whoever, that you can make something that they will be providing. If you're not going to be doing concept work, and you're going to be doing production work, then I would have some pieces of art in your portfolio that are existing concepts. It'll be cool that you can do your own. They'll appreciate that, but that's not what they're going to be hiring you for. Second, somebody just said this. Lee M. Smith in Twitch responded saying anatomy. I completely agree, especially if you're doing creature concept work, or sorry, creature and character work. Having anatomy studies is a core foundation of that. So whether it's just essentially like figure sculpting, nude figure sculpting is great. It's really, really great. Or anatomy studies are great. Those are really good things you can do to add to your portfolio. But generally, just having some really quality characters and/or creatures in your portfolio is really what you need. So whether that's games or film or whatever, it sounds like you said VFX, so film or cinematics. Just have some great pieces in your portfolio. That's really it. Let's look at these bottom teeth. I'm noticing where the top teeth hit. I'll use this later if I really want to get deep into the anatomy of how these teeth intersect and what they do, what the bite of this character is. We're not going to get heavy into orthodontia for obvious reasons because there's no real point. But if you wanted to, you could. This model is off, so I'm going to have to do that at some point. But yeah, going back to the question, anatomy is the number one. Anatomy is always going to be the number one thing for characters. And also clothing. If you want to do characters with clothing, not characters, creatures, weird buff things like I'm making here. Even if they're wearing clothing, having some examples of being able to sculpt clothing, different types of clothing, hard surface stuff. Character artists are often called on to make armor, to make helmets, to make some occasional props that would be on a character. So that is all part of the gig. So being able to do that is important. I think clothing is something that not goes underrated. I think it's there's obviously some fantastic artists who are great at clothing, but a lot of people, especially in the beginning, are like, I did a lot of anatomy studies, and they may be fantastic at anatomy and getting very competent in that skill, but you still have to dress them at some point. Character customization, I think, is what Lee's mentioning here. It's all made by somebody. That's good enough for the teeth for me right now. I'm going to go back to this face. And for me, the overall forms here are working. I do know there's a weirdness here where this teeth is basically ending here. That's okay. That means that this, even though I've created the forms here of the mouth, it feels like the form should actually end here. I'm not going to do this, but to illustrate the point, it feels like it should end there. I, from a design standpoint, really dislike that. So I'm going to drag that all the way back there, but that means when that opens, it's going to need to be some sort of a membrane. Good points. Also, is Marvelous Designer used at all in the industry? Absolutely. Yes, it is. Especially in character art. It's used in environment art for props, ways to wrap clothing around objects, things like that. Marvelous Designer is used heavily in the industry. ZBrush is obviously competing in that things that they've added with their recent dynamics stuff earlier. I think it was earlier this year. It's still not quite the same as what Marvelous has. Cool stuff. I love the dynamics. That's what I did all my clothing in here. But if you want to do much more, accurate clothing, Marvelous is the way to go. Actually not in symmetry on this face, which is fine. Just means I got to do a couple things over. But really not a big deal. I hear a lot of artists get freaked out about symmetry. When should I turn off symmetry? When should I not sculpt in symmetry? Is it okay to do that? It's fine. No matter what, you'll be fine. You just gotta, do it again. I don't mind a little bit of the marks that I'm leaving here. Some of these imperfections especially are fine, or that kind of clayish feeling that we have on some of this texture. It's not a problem. I don't want it to be too heavy-handed. I will eventually go over this with some alphas. So that's what I'm being conscious of. I don't mind it feeling like a subtle pattern or surface layer, but I don't want it to be a thing that I have to fight against when I'm getting to alphas. Maybe we'll hand sculpt it all. Ooh. It's fun to hand sculpt details. Just take a lot longer though. A lot longer. So like this area here is way too heavy-handed. I'll dial this back. And the way I'm doing that is just brushing on top of it lightly. Usually going counter to whatever the grain of it is. At least that's the way I would describe it. sometimes do little circles. I'm just filling in. What that does, it just fills in some of these little sharp corners or edges. When blocking out a character, to use multiple primitive shapes, use a preset body, or sculpt away a sphere. All the above. It really depends on what my goal is. You know, some characters, if you're working within a pipeline, you may be required to use a base mesh, or at least end up in a base mesh, and that's usually for rigging purposes or proportional purposes. For this character, I ended up using a base mesh, a very simple one. I'll load it up here though, so you can kind of see what it looks like. This is the Critical Role theme song. Sorry, I got distracted. Baseman with shoes. This is the character that I started this sculpt with. And this is, I'll show you just the body part of it. Got these shorts for him just in case. Do you watch Critical Role or play D&D? Yes, both of them. All of the above.
Is it Thursday yet?
So this is like some of the areas that I really want to work on back here. I have about an hour and a half left in the stream. So we're just going to keep chiseling away at this. Fleshing out these forms. Another technique that I sometimes like to use in these areas is I'll switch to my clay brush. I'll turn the intensity really far down, like to 5. And I'll just go over it. And I kind of treat this as like fat, if it's going to add fat to an area. A fat pad. What's my favorite character to play? I assume you're talking about playing in D&D. I like playing fighters. I like simple characters like that to play. Often I DM. So when I play, I prefer to focus more on role play versus mechanics, because I get a lot more. I do so much mechanic as a DM, so something simple that I can just focus on and enjoy playing with other people. That or the opposite, which is where you make like a super complicated rule. You know, every action and bonus action and move, and you have multiple options and special feats and traits and features you can do. So I've done both. If I don't want to play a fighter, I'll usually play a face, meaning like a bard or a warlock or a sorcerer or a paladin. I like all of them. I'm the person who, whenever I play those types of games, has like 5 characters that they've made when they sit down to the table, and sometimes just a roll a die to see which one I'm going to play. the app. We are using ZBrush today. Definitely looking forward to being able to play, tabletop games. The table again. It's been a while. And definitely want to try to get in some custom printed stuff at some point. I've done Hero Forge before, which is great, but never custom stuff for a campaign yet, just because the 3D printing stuff that you're seeing here above me is relatively new. It's during pandemic, so no chances for that yet. This muscle doesn't really go this way, so it's pretty exaggerated. It's also very round. Not super excited about how this thing looks. I like what the shape it makes, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense as like an individual sculpt. So I'm probably gonna have to resolve this. Just saving. Did I have all that done? Oh, I was like, okay, good. Yeah, I heard this gonna be 7 hours. I am not fully caught up yet. I'm very close though. Just a couple episodes away. So you can see, even though it looks like, oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Hang on, wait. I want to blow everybody's eardrums out. Saved myself. Even though it looks like there's not a ton of work done in this, from this to this, what you'll notice is it is actually a lot. Like this is before, this is after. So let's get back to making something that's equivalent so you can kind of see from here to here. Some of these shapes that you're looking at, this is the before, this is the after. Some of these shapes actually look a little bit better. They're a little bit more aggressive. They're a little bit more, that's because the character's also in a slight pose. I can always pose the character, add these kind of up lines and the lines that are working with the head a little bit better. So I can finalize that more as we move forward, but the overall structure of it in many ways is much better, and it's actually more detailed and resolved. So I'm going to have to keep tweaking this, and I do often go back and forth like this and say, like, what have I missed? What am I missing that I actually liked? So as I do that right now, I can tell you, like, I actually like some of these shapes that are coming in from the before. I like that more. I don't necessarily like what I just did here on the neck. It makes it a little blobby, less aggressive. So I'm going to have to come in here and spend a little bit of time in that, but it's definitely getting there. I think it's honestly the trap shape could probably be a little larger. As long as you're like not fully done with a character, nothing is off limits. You can always come back and say, like, well, it would be better if like this supported the character more. Let's get that trap shape. If you want to build these big, neck muscles here, the sternocleidomastoid, maybe it needs to be a little supported here. What does that look like? The body, not bad. Right, this is what it was looking like before. Not too bad, Let's build this out a little bit more so it supports the neck from different angles. Let's go back and forth between this. Let's get that body so we can see the body as well. So always going back and forth, and I do this constantly. It's actually one of my favorite features of ZBrush is that you can basically consistently refer to your previous sculpts and make it so that there's always something there. I'm going to give it, I kind of like this little smile that this creature has in the previous version. This almost Heath Ledger-esque scar membrane thing. We'll give it a little bit more character. And I was losing it, and I feel like it's a part of the character that I was actually quite digging. So we're going to bring that back. And I lost some of these little tiny wrinkles in there. I think I'm going to get those back at some point. I just need to define why they'd be appearing. Because as we noticed with the teeth actually only go back so far. So this is going to be some sort of a membrane. Maybe we can hint at that a little bit and some little wrinkles in here as well, that there's going to be some sort of a stretching motion to this. Or you can do the opposite, which is like we can tuck it in here and do like this sort of donut-shaped thing around there, but then it looks a lot like a sock puppet. So I'll be avoiding that at all costs. All right, everybody. We're about an hour 15 left in the stream. You know, I've been asking for names for this character for a couple weeks. I haven't got anything amazing, anything that sticks out to anybody. So if you got names for this character, this creature, let me know. So look at how fast, even though this is highest resolution, this is all faceted in here. So this all needs to be cleaned up. You can smooth it and then add details to it. That kind of works. It doesn't work as much as you want. Arrowhead, Matthew Griffith. Hope you're doing well. Hope your classes are going well. I don't think we're even going to see this part of his neck. There's not really real muscles that make these shapes in here. There's the platysma, which is if you like really stretch out your neck, do this, you can see that coming out. But there's not really muscles there, so I should adjust that. Sometimes what I find happens to me is I get a little too into just noodling and finalizing something, and then I lose some of the energy, or I lose some of what was there before. So that's why I always keep the just graduated. Oh wow, congrats. That was the swirl brush. Spiral. Use this brush once or twice to make this type of a thing. People don't really know what it's used for. I also can do, you can do cool things with, like, maybe I just want a subtle tweak to the eyes, or like the shapes in somewhere, and use it for this kind of thing. Turn up that mouth. Or just turn it into a terrifying monster. Ah! New creature, done, save. Any course that you recommend for introducing ZBrush? Yeah, Introduction to ZBrush. We have one online that runs online. Great course. All of our courses will be online probably until our campus is opening in fall, so I don't know when, eventually we'll transition to a fully online or fully in-person paradigm, and we'll be able to have our full course load online. But for now, at least for the foreseeable future, you can take Introduction to ZBrush. Thank you for asking, though. I'll poke my head over this little bar here. I don't think we're going to see any of that stuff, but I do want to do it eventually, so might as well. Get a little more detail in there. So I still want to get some of these bigger forms in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Big one went a little high. Creating those planes and contrasts. I like to use the standard brush for that type of stuff. It's rounded, but it can still help create large planar shapes. Are the courses available to high schoolers? I don't know about that specifically, if there's an age limit, but I would recommend speaking to our admissions and seeing if there's something that might fit well for you if you're in high school, or if you're a teacher or a parent looking for your classes. It can definitely help you out. I'm going to define this shape a little bit more. I like to go down to lower subdivision levels and help defining forms like this. Then when you go up, they're still there, but they're not completely, they're not lost entirely. This form is a huge undercut, which is not something that really exists in normal anatomy. So I'm going to try to resolve that. And I know something I'm missing from the previous one. Some of this stuff back here. I adjusted this a little bit. Show this at the body. I'm liking some of what I've done here in the new trap area. But I do miss some of this aggressiveness, these details. We can get those back. I think it's this area that I'm missing a little bit. Kind of made it a little more softer. Let's go ahead and get some things here for that to latch onto, reasoning for that to be built out. Let's even give this a little bit more definition rather than just this peak that it goes to. I kind of like the peak, but I don't really know what the intent of it is. Like, what is this thing? Is this a bone? If it is a bone, why is it just going to a peak? Maybe there's some sort of a reason for this. So we'll just add in some shapes now. You can always change them later. Maybe we'll give a little crest like this. A little too high resolution on that. Looks like in the chat, we got some things posted here for all of our individual courses and appointments, and a link to our admissions advisors appointments page, or a form for that. Our admissions advisors act more as counselors and also mentors for if you're applying to one of our full-time programs. So you can go ahead and check that out. They'll be able to help you with any course questions you got. All right. Now I think we're getting there. Now it feels like it's overall an improvement to me. Some of the shapes that I've made, it feels a little stronger, feels a little bit more structural, just feels a little bit more resolved. There's some detail missing, I'm aware of that. So some teeth missing. Let's bring that in there. But it is starting to work. starting to work. I need to figure out what this exactly is doing, so I'm going to maybe just trim off the top. We'll do like kind of a classic scalloped look. I do want to add some elements of anatomy to this that are not necessarily standard, and right now it's all very standard, but I want to kind of resolve it a little bit more before I get into that. Meaning, like, if I do some of this, I'll exaggerate it, but if I do something like this type of thing, right, like, why is it doing this? What are these shapes? Do I like those shapes? Yes, actually, I do, but why is it there? So I like this one actually quite a bit. I kind of want to keep that. Adding that little detail is something I feel like I was missing from before as well. So I'm kind of cool with figuring out what some of that will be on the fly. You'll often hear me contradict myself when I'm sculpting or talking, and that's honestly because I'm kind of just talking a little bit stream of consciousness sometimes, and you're just hearing my thought process. Of like, why would I be doing this? Do I want to do it this way? No. But that worked really well, so maybe I should do it that way. So there's not always like, a preset playbook of how you're going to make something or whatever that is. Do I want to do this? The classic scarf face. No, but it is cool looking. All right. Kind of like what I put in here. Am I ever going to see it? Yes. Okay, good to know. We'll probably need to incorporate some of that stuff now more into the rest of the body anatomy, but we'll do that later. So let's get these teeth back, this eyeball back, continue. I can also pretty quickly and easily add like definition, like if I wanted to, for all this kind of stuff. And I think for this type of a character, it might make sense. Some of these bigger wrinkles. Like a weird form division that's happening right here. Already there, but it feels like it's gotten a little worse. What do you think using VDM brushes to rough concepts on start? VDM. Are you talking kit bashing? I'm assuming you're talking about. I'm not entirely what you mean by VDM. I think kit bashing is fine to an extent. I think it's okay until if it still has that look to it, then I think that's a problem. Because unless you're trying to make something look like something that's kit bashed, which I don't think is the point of concept art, then it's okay. But I think it's fine for a start. Is the way that I would say it. But the concern that I see with most people in kit bashing, as far as wanting to make something original, is they don't actually have the time to turn those pieces into original pieces. So at that point, you're either handing off the kit bashing bits to somebody else, the visual effects department, who else, art department, I don't know, to resolve that. And then it's kind of out of your hands, and whether or not they use those kit bash pieces or make something new or whatever. So I think it's okay to rough out an idea, especially if it's for yourself, but it's not something I would necessarily recommend in a bigger budget scenario. Also because, you know, if you didn't pay for the commercial license of those, that's actually illegal. So you just got to be conscious of that. And to me, that's just kind of like using Pinterest. It's like, oh, I'm using a rough shape to block this in. And I think that's efficient, but is that what you really want your final design to be? So I don't mind it. I've done it. It's effective. But I think that there's probably better ways to incorporate it, to make sure that you're changing it. Somebody who's done it the best would be Vitaly. Obviously, Kit Bash 3D is great, but Vitaly, in his sequences, makes his own kits. So spending a day, a couple weeks, a week to define what your kit's going to be, I think is a better use of time, especially if you're going onto a big project. All right, this is going to need to be worked on quite a bit to start fleshing this out, but I'm kind of liking this shape. I don't love all these right now, but it needs to be cleaned up a little. And also, why is this here? Am I going to incorporate this now into the rest of the design because I just added these, right? Are they only going to be here? They probably shouldn't only be here. So, but it's coming along. All right, let's get in. We got about an hour left in the stream right now, so we can either jump onto other pieces, which we've done many other times, or we can start getting into some more details. I'd like to get into some more details and just kind of start fleshing this out a little bit further. There are areas here that are still very sketchy and need to be resolved. But that can always happen a little later. He's using a leaf blower outside. Good night, Goosebumps. Thank you. You too. All right, let's see. I think generally I'm pretty happy with how this is. So I'm going to go and save this. It's a new version. I'm going to show the whole character. I'm going to remove the cloak and all that stuff. So that would be this and this and this and this. I don't need that. Just to kind of confirm, gut check myself. Do the same thing here. Remove these pieces. Select the eyeball. I like selecting the same subtool. Ideally, that's not highlighted because it helps me, you know, make sure I'm looking at something that's not highlighted versus not highlighted. And overall, what you'll notice is there's not a huge, massive difference from here. And that's kind of the goal, right? The goal is not to make it entirely different character. The goal is to slowly upgrade the character you've been working with. All right. But so far, we've got a good head start on this thing. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. Let's go back to this one. Select this. Looks like I need to remove some of these elements. And what this is, I had something like implanted in the character here. I don't really like that anymore. I'm going to remove that. That's the idea of that. Now that I'm looking at the overall character, I'm just going to dial up some of the contrast in some of these areas. Sculpting from a very far away level. Even though we just spent some time in that area being a little closer, it's good to keep iterating and take a step back. Let's work on the body. So we're going to remove the extras. Body's kind of in a decent state, but you can see when we get to these areas, they're very low res. It's really just it's an interpretation of hands than it is anything else. Now the body and the head are separate subtools. That's why I can kind of manipulate them separately, which is intentional. I don't want to spend a bunch of time, working on combining them or doing anything like that. I'd like to keep it separate. But I might need to find a good break point for them. It's probably easy to do it there. I'm not in love with the anatomy that I ended up doing here. It's very, classic bodybuilder character. I like, some of this arm shape that's going on. I just like some of what's going on here. This is not a big fan of that. And then the legs are a little meh to me. So we'll probably end up adjusting some of that stuff as we move forward. And we also did start incorporating some of this new elements here. So that's some stuff we can pull out rather than just being, classic muscular person. Maybe we can get in a little bit more additional elements to the anatomy. We've got new teeth. We've got an upgraded head. It's all important. So let's use our Damien standard brush. I'm going to be at a distance, and I'm going to dial up the intensity to 50 from 35. Also load up the other tool so that it can be similarly viewed. So here's what we're kind of comparing. Right now it looks like just the neck has really changed, and the goal is to kind of tie in some more of what we've been doing here with this. Chat, anybody got suggestions for what we could what interesting elements we could bring into this anatomy? Right now we have very standard anatomy, so if there's anybody that any suggestions or ideas people have, I'd be interested in hearing. I'm going to do a quick adjustment. I'm going to save the version I have. This may break the character and look really terrible, so that's why I'm saving. And one thing I just comment, I guess, is like never being afraid to try something stupid or what feels like a stupid idea. If you ever look at lizards, they have very wide bodies. So the idea of potentially thinning the body, maybe not the whole body. Reminds you of Venom. That's fine. I love Venom. Venom's an awesome character. I'll take that. It's something that feels like, less like big chest, beach muscles, Venice Beach look. It might allow for something that's a little bit more thinner. Necessarily thinner isn't really where I'm looking for, but like a more like differently proportioned. I don't know what the right word I'm searching for is, but it just kind of looks like they got squashed. But as compared to, let's just dial this up and we'll see what those proportions actually look like. Does it look like they just got run over by a steamroller? Sorta. There's also like a certain flatness to it, but that's because I didn't really sculpt on top of it. There's like a certain flatness to it that kind of I like, though. Now, it does mean I would have to reposition all these other pieces that I built on it and change that. But it does make it less a buff dude. And I think there's something there. I don't know if it's these proportions, but I think there's something there that I like. I'm going to undo for a little bit, especially that leg part, but I think the chest is a good starting point. It's fine. Let's experiment with this a little bit longer. This is what a real lizard would look like. Have you ever looked at like a Komodo dragon or like a monitor lizard? But this is like legit what their arms look like. I'll show you. I'll show you in case you've never seen it. Look at this muscly little thing in here. Let's see what we got. Oh, they're hugging. They're super strong though. I don't know if we want to go on full on lizard though, right? And you can see like what I'm kind of talking about with the muscles. We're not going to keep these proportions, by the way, but it is interesting. Somebody says the broad shoulders really contrast the tiny head, but to balance that, maybe reducing the size of the V waist. Yeah. I agree. I agree with what you're saying. You're kind of saying what I was kind of thinking, but the idea of if it's thinner, they wouldn't be so traditionally V'd in the waist, right? They would be broader. And that would allow for probably some different shapes than what we have as humans. It also mean, like, if you also look at lizards, one thing you can notice about them is just how long the torso is. Right, this sort of proportion of the legs being quite long. Right, this is more what this is going to look terrible, but this is more what like a lizard body looks like. Just try to correct this real quick before it looks really terrible, but it would be something more like this if it was a evolved lizard of some kind. Is that what I want it to look like? No, not really, but you kind of get my point. It would have a different frame, it would have a different shape, and maybe there's an opportunity here to push that a little bit further than we are. I really like this sort of posture sometimes where the arms are almost like rotated inwards, and like this is gonna this would almost be impossible to rig, but you know, they kind of like live like this. They're in the front because if they were evolved from living like this, they would kind of, you know, from a profile view, be rotated inwards because they don't necessarily have a clavicle in the way that humans have a clavicle. So we could experiment with this a little bit. Might need to adjust how those arms are positioned. The actual crotch could practically go away if we're going to play with that idea too. widen this. So even though this is not really the overall proportions that I don't think I'd want, probably get what I'm playing at here. Just how the anatomy would have evolved over time. A lot of this would have to be reworked, so it's fine though. So if we compare this, after some adjustments, let's save this as an option. This is the anatomy that we had before, and this is the anatomy that we had afterwards, or before. This is before, this is afterwards. I don't have any good quadruped anatomy books. I do not know of any great, just straight up quadruped anatomy books. Sorry. I think I just need to work on the overall proportions, because I think this is, this is what we had before. We're going to do this, and we'll do this side by side. I think the one on the right feels far more natural to the character. It doesn't really break the overall intent of the character. It's still a super muscly character, but it just changes some of the proportions to be less standard. This is kind of the way that I like to work, which is I like to build something, and in some ways it will be more generic. I'll use the reference straight off of the bodybuilder photos or whatever, and then kind of start tweaking it from there. Even from a profile, from here to here, similar, but you can see the difference. We'll just switch like this to see the bigger difference, but it's the adjustment of the weight is pretty significant of where it's at and the posture of where it's at. Now I do need to the downside of doing this after doing all that other stuff is I need to adjust everything else that was sitting on top. So that's a bummer and an annoyance, but the end result, which is this, I think I'm going to run with, is going to be better. So all the anatomy to sculpt, that's okay. All the things to resolve, that's okay. It's all part of the fun part about doing this. And I might even just shift this arm up a little, so those arms aren't crazy long. Let's see, we got a bunch of questions coming in. Somebody's got some comments about the good quadruped anatomy book called An Atlas of Animal Anatomy for Artists. Apparently, there's PDFs. Can I tell you about the character and the software I'm using? This is a character that we've made for the stream, sort of a cast, part of a cast. We've been slowly iterating on this character over several streams. And then the software I'm using is called ZBrush today. It's a digital sculpting software. It's available by Pixelogic. It's really, really good. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot like sculpting in clay. So looks really cool. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. All right, so we got like 40 more minutes. What I'm going to do basically for the rest of these 40 minutes is I'm going to take all these other pieces that I sculpted and start working on them to fit into this new anatomy that we have. So, like I said, fun part is I think I've made a better design, or at least a design that fits better than it did before we got to these proportions. There'll be some resculpting that needs to happen as I do this. Again, also fine. A lot of people get worried, especially when they're starting, about having to start over, having to redo a piece, or having to redo something. I don't. At this point, I know that I could probably resculpt this character from scratch, and that's okay. A good exercise is sculpt something, then smooth it out completely, and save it over your existing file and sculpt it again. Prove to yourself that you can do that, because you can. This is also going to help me a lot more with some of this anatomy stuff that I was inputting here. It's basically saying I want to change some of the anatomy and not make it normal. This is where I started with all that. Do you know any good exercises to become faster? If you're interested in increasing your speed, just do exercises on increasing your speed. Meaning, do a sculpt in 3 hours. I don't know what your speed is currently, but if 8 hours is a long project for you, try to do that same project or that same level of project in 4 hours. If you can do that, do it in 2 hours. And then when you can do that, do it in an hour. And just learn to work within a time frame, right? Give yourself that time frame, otherwise you'll noodle. So do a lunch crunch. That was one of the original things that got a lot of people interested in speed with lunch crunches. So say sculpt something in 1 hour, and when I say sculpt something, I mean have a specific goal. So I'm going to sculpt a bust, a head of an existing character, right? Maybe some of the original ones that I remember were, sculpt a design from Zelda, sculpt a design from they did Punch Out. I remember those were older ones from Mario. Do a sculpt of Bowser, do a sculpt of something in an hour or 2 hours, but have a timer and have it up as well. That's an important thing, so you see it, because otherwise you'll get to the end and be like, oh, I didn't finish. But the point of the exercise is exactly like you would do physical exercise, which is know what your goal is and be able to finish the whole thing, right? So and have that up. If you know that you've only got 30 minutes left, try to finish it within those 30 minutes. And that's the important part of doing those types of exercises. Speed is not the primary concern, or it shouldn't be the primary concern for you, unless you're feeling pretty confident about your sculpting abilities and you just want to get faster. If you're just starting out, there are other ways to improve your skills that are not just speed. Whether it's anatomy studies or certain types of things like that, and you can include those in this thing that we're in these exercises. But just generally, I guess the comment is if you want to practice if you want to get faster, practice getting faster. If you want to practice making really great detailed characters, practice doing details. If you want, whatever it is you want to get better at, practice that thing, and that will help you get there. When a power lifter who's training for strength doesn't run a marathon, right? They don't run hours and hours and hours of cardio, right? They lift heavy things, and vice versa. So train what it is that you want to do. Weird shapes in the back here now. We'll have to adjust those at some point, but I think generally I like these proportions a lot more. And so now that we have them, I will hit save. I will save not over my previous file, even though I could. I'll start adjusting all these previous things. We have these shorts. I think the anatomy is different enough now. I don't think I need these shorts, so we'll get rid of those. And here we go. Here's the fun challenge of taking all these previous sculpts and putting them onto the new proportions. I could have used, maybe should have used, I don't know. What was it called? Subtool Master. I could have done that. But I'll figure it out. Doesn't need to be perfect. This is all sketchy stuff. This is, again, a sketch to get to the final result. If it doesn't work 100%, that's okay. And I have my other one here, so what I'll do is I'll just start uploading, not uploading, but turning these on so that I know what it was going to look like. I think it's actually going to make the end result look a lot better with those new proportions. One of my biggest complaints with it as I was working on it was it just felt like He-Man. And this will still feel like He-Man-esque, which is totally fine. But it won't feel like straight up He-Man. Where did I get inspiration from him? Beta Ray Bill was a superhero that I was definitely inspired by. Conan. Reluctant heroes, usually. See a superhero. Beta Ray Bill is a superhero. You'll see the resemblance if you Google that. Google Beta Ray Bill. But I kind of wanted to do a character who would like live in the woods, have some sci-fi elements to him. Would be a creature. Adjust these legs. You mean my character? I wanted to create a story about a sort of a barbarian, space barbarian. Space barbarian was actually the theme. What would a version of a space barbarian look like? Why would they be in space? Why would they be a barbarian? That was my initial launching point for, starting this project. What would they encounter? Where are they from? And again, like I said, I wanted to do a creature. pretty close for this one. I'm going to turn on color. And it'll help define certain areas that I did want or didn't. And then we'll go to the next piece. Turn that one off though. These ones are not too bad. This one I just kind of want to get over the hands. Also, something with this process that I'm doing right now is actually, this is very possible that this would happen in production. Somebody says, oh, you know what, we like it, but we want to change the overall proportions. We want to do something, right? And so that's up to the model or the artists to adjust it. Adjust it and make it work. Yeah, this is what it looks like on this body variation. This is what it looks like on this body variation. It's all very common types of work. Did I rig them? No, I did not. What are the alternative paths for ZBrush? You guess it's paid. It is. For self-study people who just want to get into the industry or be prepared for it. As a mother, I'd like to give the right advice to my son. Thank you in advance. No problem at all. There are some free versions of ZBrush. I would check them out. One is called ZBrush Core Mini. I'll show you. That's basically a very limited version of what we have here. So you can check that here at ZBrush Core Mini. It's basically what you see, but you can sculpt. It's a beginning sculpting program that will give you limited options, but it is pretty good. ZBrush also has several other versions. So if you go into buy ZBrush or get ZBrush, they have a subscription model for $39.95 a month. This is the big license for forever. It's perpetual. I bought my license back in 2006, 2007, and I've never paid for it again. But there are some other versions called ZBrush Core. This is only $10 a month, and it's similar. It's not the free version. It's not this one here, but it's slightly upgraded and has more features. And so this is probably what I would basically say, like, if somebody wants to get into this, to try it, I would try the free version here. And then if they like that, I would upgrade them into ZBrush Core, which is the $10 a month version. And then if they really are liking it, they want to become a pro, or they're going to go to school for that, then get the full version, which is what I would do. The other thing, the other piece of software that's probably the best, and you'll see people in the chat talking about it, is Blender. Blender is a free software, and it's a full 3D package. So these are the two softwares that you would want to get into if you're interested in showing that to your kids. Blender and ZBrush are the two that will give them the most well-rounded. The other one, if they're into games, would be Unreal, which is just spelled like this: Unreal Engine, not the TV show. And this is what a lot of games are made inside of it. And this is also a free program, so you can for free. So those are the big ones. As far as training, there's all kinds of tutorials and stuff on YouTube that I'm sure you're saying your son can look into if they are interested in this. And there's a lot of self-guided tours and learning within that that they should be, I would think, would be pretty good for them to kind of get started on. So hopefully that's helpful for you. ZBrush, Core, Mini, Unreal, and Blender. Kind of like the starter kit. When you get started in 3D, you think you want to do this, or somebody wants to do this, those are where you start. Yes, that's right. ArtStation Learning is also free. Good call. Thank you very much for saying that. Oh, let's wait for this to respond. ArtStation Learning is also free, so I would definitely check that one out, because that one is a great place to get started in some stuff. So ArtStation Learning, I'll put this over here, but you can kind of see as far as a free site, right, where you can learn illustration, you can learn all these different types of things. They just actually got bought by Epic, which is the same company that makes Unreal. And so that's also free, which is very cool. Yeah, you see a lot of people commenting in the chat, but Blender Discord is a great place for you to get started. Yeah, it's really great. Is ZBrush difficult to learn compared to something like Blender? My opinion is no. I've heard a lot of people have complaints about ZBrush in general, about learning ZBrush. And that's because it doesn't really think or work like a quote-unquote normal 3D program. Meaning it doesn't function in the same way, like it doesn't operate in the same way from an architecture level to the thinking of what's needed, because it's a sculpting program. It does have other things inside of it, but it's primarily a sculpting package, so it's more of their methodology is what would be the best sculpting app out there, not what would be the best 3D app out there. So the people that I see have trouble learning ZBrush are actually people who have much more experience in 3D, not beginners. Beginners can usually pick up ZBrush very simply because it is at its core a relatively simple program. We're making our way through this adjustment to the it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. We don't need it to be perfect. To the reproportioning that we've been doing here. I still have to go through the whole character as I was about to go through the whole body, and this is kind of what prompted me to do the reproportioning anyways, because I knew I was going to have to go through the whole character and touch it up, and I wasn't in love with how it was looking. So that's why I ended up changing it. And I'm actually much happier with it. So we'll hide this pose character. We'll save this one last time. Won't be the last time. No problem. I hope it's helpful for you. I hope your son enjoys it too. Would sculpting in Real help for ZBrush? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Traditional skills will translate into digital skills, whether it's drawing or sculpting or painting. Any of those types of things will translate because it is the same core concepts that you're learning. So if you're into drawing, if you're into sculpting in clay, I can guarantee you those skills will translate. It's actually one of the things that in our 2-year program we have, all people in that program take a traditional figure sculpting class, and a lot of people learn a lot about sculpting in that course. So yeah, definitely worth the investment to learn a little bit about sculpting, to get some sculpting. I prefer Monster Clay. Or Sculpey is easy. It's available at most hobby stores. But if you want to get into it, Monster Clay is a sculpting clay. It's like $30, but it's a oil-based clay, and what that basically means is that it never dries out. So you can leave it in its little thing, and you can choose soft, medium, or hard. You can sculpt a Abe Lincoln, or you can sculpt a vampire bat, whatever one you like the most. But it's a really, really great clay. Obviously, you can check out the ratings or whatever. Really, really high reviews, but it's really, really good. So check that out. All right, now I need to put the hammer back in the hand. Let's get this hammer back in the hand. Looks like Geonix Walker from YouTube says, "Hi Josh, first time joining live. I wanted to ask, you exercise anatomy in the past months, switching between studies, between muscles, subtool blockouts, and a single sphere sculpting. Which one do I believe is better?" Good question. There's not a one that's better. Doing those studies between, having single subtools, multiple subtools, all of that is just really good ways to build up your workflow, right? And knowing sculpting in all those different ways is going to teach you what way you like to do it. Do you like to have a pre-built base mesh, or do you like to have the freedom of sculpting from a sphere, right? That's going to be your choice as far as how you like to sculpt. It's no different than somebody painting and saying, well, I'm going to paint in watercolor, I'm going to paint in acrylic, I'm going to paint in oil. This time I'm going to paint freehand and do nothing. This time I'm going to paint and have an underlayer, right, where I'm going to draw, maybe there's so many different ways to make art. There's so many different ways to sculpt that at the end of the day, it's about your workflow. And so doing those studies is probably really good for you, whether or not you liked what the outcomes were, or more, yes or no, but you're going to learn the way that you learn best and the way that you produce the best, whatever way is best for you. So there's not a best way. I like sculpting from spheres. I like sculpting from base meshes that have little information on them. I like sculpting from base meshes that have great topology that I'm adjusting. I like sculpting stuff in single subtools and multiple subtools, and it really depends on, sometimes it's just mood, and sometimes it's, the entirety of what I want to sculpt or how I want to sculpt something. So I think it's just good to try out a little bit of everything and see which one works for you. Yeah, that's awesome. It's awesome you're doing those studies. Studies are the number one way to get good, to practice. That's what they're there for. They're studies, right? They're not make portfolio. Yeah, maybe the one you're feeling the best. That's right. Next, maybe challenge for you is go up from a study to more of a full character or a prop or whatever, whatever the next logical step for you is. Don't choose something that's too big that you won't be able to complete, but choose something that you think you can complete and use what you've learned to make that something that's a little more complicated than what you've been doing. So if it's just a head, right, add a head and a shoulders and hands and arms, right? You can find other ways to do that. Let's add this poncho. It's not going to adjust too much, but enough. Apparently I really jacked that thing up, huh? It's all right, we'll fix it later. And let's get this pelt on. With all this stuff on, excuse me, it doesn't really make a big difference. And this character actually probably feels a little bigger than this character does. But I think overall, proportionally, I'm happier with this character. From this one to this one, just feels a little more natural. Once you put the cloak on him, I think the cloak is probably the biggest thing, or actually probably the pelt. It's probably the biggest thing that's changing. Because even that, you can still feel it. So this one that I'll probably need to spend some more time on. That's okay. Now we'll keep just the poncho on, and we'll adjust this later. So today, we redid the head. We got about 10 minutes left in the stream, so we'll do kind of a little bit of a recap. We sculpted on the head quite a bit, proportioned that. We did some overall adjustments to the proportions of the body, which I'm much happier with. Here to here. Doesn't seem like a ton, but it is. And we're in a pretty good place to start moving forward on the rest of the character. So now I feel pretty confident, if I took this off, that I could start making this version of all this stuff without having huge adjustments. And what I had gotten to that on was because I was going to work on the body. And so I can probably finalize this body, get the scene right here. Finalize this body a little bit more, figure out what some more what the anatomy is really going to be, and then we can get into those other pieces in the next streams. I'm excited about that. Feels like real progress, which is good. Somebody says, or the person who was asking about sculpting question before was, thanks for the advice. You're studying on game animation. Want to focus on character art since ZBrush happened. So I think I'll make a habit of watching your streams. Thank you. Yeah, like I think some of the anatomy here. Let's hide this poncho. You can see I still need to adjust some of this. Look how far this is sticking off the body. It should really be like this, which means this should be like this. So there's going to be a lot more little adjustments that in the end are going to make much bigger differences than they appear to right now. Oh yeah, don't forget. I'm gonna go to our Instagram. This Friday we have an event with Gina. She's an amazing costume designer. She recently did a Gnomon DVD, I believe, a Gnomon workshop title. They're not called DVDs anymore. We're creating costume art. If you're interested in that, she's worked on a bunch of cool shows, like the Boys. I think she was one of the main designers for Homelander, and I can't remember what the Flash guy's name is, but a bunch of cool characters there. So you can also check her out on Instagram here. See what kind of cool, awesome stuff she's done. Some sweet characters. Let's see some of this go. So Homelander, and looks like some stuff from what's that? Doom Patrol. Bunch of awesome characters here. Maeve as well. So she'll be on our stream on Friday from 11 a.m. to 12:30, basically over lunch. And yeah, check that out because she's awesome and she's going to be giving some good advice and shows how she's basically going to take a 3D base into her costume art, her costume design, costume concept process. So even costume designers are using 3D, and so you'll get a quick glimpse into how she does that, which will be cool. So yeah, definitely cool for sure. All right, everybody. Well, I don't have a lot more to cover today, and I'm feeling like I'm at a pretty good stopping point. We are a couple minutes early, but I'm going to end the stream here because I don't want to like start into this project before there's not enough time. So yeah, that's basically going to be it for today. Thank you, everybody, for hanging around in the stream, for joining me, for all the great questions. I really, really appreciate them. We will be here again next week. Obviously, check out the stream on Friday with Gina. We'll have a bunch of other cool events, so like and subscribe anything that that you're watching on, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, because we will be doing a lot of streams through the rest of the year. We do this stream every Wednesday from 2 to 5 Pacific time. So feel free to tune in and like and subscribe so you can get those notifications. But otherwise, we will see you all next week or maybe even Friday. All right, everybody. Have a restful, wonderful day.